Hello everyone. Today we're gonna brew a 5-gallon beer. So I went to the beer store. I bought a 5-gallon brewing kit, and this is it. I already emptied the equipment because I started sanitizing them. But this is just a standard. There's multiple units out there. This is more top of the line. It has 2-stage fermentation buckets and a bunch of other equipments that will help you get the best brew possible. So again, I already emptied out all the equipments because I started sanitizing them. This is a 5-gallon brewing bucket, 2 of them, and a fermentation 5-gallon bucket, and all the equipments are sitting here being sanitized. So while I do the sanitation, I'm gonna go upstairs, start boiling my water so I can boil the ingredients to start pouring into those gallons once it's done. So let's go upstairs. So this is the beer ingredient kit. I also bought it from the beer store. There's multiple kinds out there. This is a Pilsner. So again, we're gonna open it here. Look at some of the ingredients. You know, this is the malt extract, beer caps, hops, sugar, primary sugar. There's a set of instructions here that you should follow step by step for day 1, and then once you ferment it, on the back some of the other instructions. So the first step is to pour the 5-gallon to pour 2.5 gallons of water and start boiling it so you can drop the hops in to start boiling. So we're gonna do that. So this is our 5-gallon pot. I already poured 2.5 gallons of water per the instructions. I'm making sure it's up to 160 Fahrenheit degrees so I can pour the hops in. So I'm measuring the heat here, and I used just a regular gallon of water to measure the 2.5 gallons. So I poured 2.5 of these in here, and now I'm gonna take my hops and throw them in here once I check that the heat is 160. Yep. So now I'm gonna drop the crushed bag of hops into the water to create the worts. And here it goes. So we're gonna let that steep for about 20 minutes per the instructions. So I'll let that steep for 20 minutes. Alright guys, so it's been 20 minutes since we dropped the hops into the water to create the wort. So let's check out how we're doing here. Alright, you can see the color has changed. There's a smell. It looks great. So I'm just gonna remove the hops bag. I'm not gonna squeeze it. I'm just gonna let all the water drop back into the pot. I'm gonna hold it like that for about 30 seconds. And now that we have removed the bag of hops, we're gonna bring it to a boil, which I already did, and we're gonna add the malt extract. So I'm just gonna pour it in. Again, this is the malt extract as part of the brewing kit. Pour it all in. And once that's done, we're gonna boil it up for about 5 minutes, stir it, make sure it's really stirred well, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. Alright guys, now that we have put in the malt extract, we brought the water up to a boil, we're gonna add our hops. Hops is what gives the beer its distinct flavor. Again, this is an ale Pilsner. So this is what came with the kit. So I'm just gonna drop the hops in. So from this point on, I'm just gonna stir it for a little bit, and then we're gonna have it boil for about 45 minutes. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna stir it gently, and then keep checking on it within the 45 minutes, maybe 2-3 times. Stir it gently, and make sure it's a rolling boil. It's an easy boil. So I'll see you in 45 minutes. All right, guys. So now it's been 45 minutes since we've added the liquid malt. I've checked on the pot a couple of times to stir it and make sure everything's liquefied. And now we're gonna add the next ingredient, which is the dry malt. So I know we added the liquid malt, now the dry malt, depending on the recipe. Some have only liquid malt, some have dry malt, and some have both. And this recipe had both. So just to recap, we got our equipment, we sanitized it, we added the water to the pot, we boiled it, we added the grain, then we added the hops, then we added the liquid malt for 45 minutes, and now we're gonna add the dry malt, and then we're gonna add another hop and boil it for another 10-15 minutes, and that's it. So let's add the dry malt at this point. So we have 2 pounds of dry malt. All right, guys, so our last ingredient is to add the last set of hops. So it's been 5 minutes since I added the dry malt, and now I'm gonna add the hops. All right, it happens, you just pick it up. So we're gonna do this for another 10 minutes, bring it to a boil for 10 minutes, and that would be it. Then we would we'll cool it down, I'll show you how, and then we'll put it in a fermentation bucket. Thank you. All right, guys, so it's been about 10 minutes since we've added the last ingredient, which was the last set of hops. So this is it for the boil. I'm gonna terminate the boil. Just gonna give it a little twist, twirl, and then terminate it. All right, so I'm gonna shut this off. The next step is to cool this off. You can do it in multiple ways. The way I'm gonna do it, I brought an ice bucket, put some ice in it, added water, and I'm just gonna submerge the whole pot into the ice bath. So let's do that. So this is it. I'm gonna leave it for a little while, measure the temperature in about 20 minutes to see if it got to 60 Fahrenheit so we can transfer it to the fermentation bucket. So I'll see you in about 15-20 minutes. All right, guys, so now that we have cooled off the mixture to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna transfer it to the fermentation bucket. Obviously, you can pour this in, but we're gonna try and keep the sediments in the pot, so I'm gonna siphon this in. So I have my siphon here, and I'm just gonna transfer it to the fermentation bucket. Alright, guys, so now that we siphoned the mixture into the fermenting bucket, remember we only started with about 2.5 gallons and we're brewing for 5 gallons, so we need to add some water, about 2.5 gallons. So I measured 2.5 gallons in this bucket. I'm just going to pour it in. I'm going to mix it really well, and then I'm going to take the OG measurement. Alright, guys, so I got a sanitized hydrometer. I'm going to drop it in, and I'm looking for a reading of about 1.04 or to 1.044. So I got a measurement of 1.041, which is what I wanted. I'm gonna put this aside. And now we're gonna add the magic ingredient, which is the yeast. Yeast, I'm gonna sprinkle it all over. Yeast will provide the bacteria needed for the fermentation. And this is pretty much the last step here. I'm gonna stir in the yeast real well. And now that I've stirred in the yeast, I'm gonna place the lid on the fermenter. Gonna put my airlock, filled it with halfway with water. Gonna gently put it in, and you'll see it bubbling. You know, after 24 hours or after 48 hours, the CO2 will be escaping through the airlock. That's when the fermentation happens. So this is it for the first stage of fermentation. I'm gonna place it in a cool, dark, temperature neutral place, about 55 to 59 degrees, in about 10 days. 10 days to 14 days, I'll move this batch into another 5 bucket into the second fermentation stage, and we'll wait another 2 to 3 weeks from that point to bottle it. But anyways, from this point on, I'll see you guys in about 10 to 14 days. Thank you. All right, guys. So today it's been 2 weeks since we started our first stage fermentation, and today we're going to transfer the beer to the second 5-gallon bucket to start our second stage fermentation, which will take about 4 to 5 weeks. So let's open the bucket, see how our mixture is doing. Smells good. So as you can see, the color is good. The reason we do the second stage fermentation is just to get a clearer beer, purer beer, and makes it taste better. So for this stage, all you need is another 5 bucket carboy and a siphon. So I'm just gonna go ahead and siphon the beer from the old bucket to the new bucket, and then we can store it for another 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 5 weeks. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright guys, so we finished siphoning the beer to the second fermentation 5-gallon carboy, and as you can see, I like the color, I like the smell. We left everything at the bottom. We just took the beer that we wanted, and from this point on we need to ferment it for another 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm going to put a lid on it. Remember guys, depending on the recipe, this is a lager. So because this is a lager, the second fermentation needs to be a cold fermentation. I don't have the proper equipment for that, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just stick it in the fridge. The temperature needs to be somewhere between 36 and 42 degrees. So I made some space in the fridge, which I'll show you in a second, and I'll stick it there for 4 to 5 weeks, and then we should have, pretty good lager. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick it in the fridge, and I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so here we are. I just put it in the fridge. This is a second fridge that I have. So it's going to be here for about 5 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks. But remember, this is a lager recipe. So the lager needs to be cold fermented for the second stage. If it's not a lager, you don't need to do this. You can just put it in somewhere dry and dark. It can ferment at degrees between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, but since it's a lager, it needs to be colder. So I'm going to set the fridge to about 40 degrees or 39 and let it lager for about 4 to 6 weeks. So I'll see you guys in about 4 to 6 weeks. Thanks. Alright guys, so it's been about 4.5 weeks since we started lagering our beer, the second stage fermentation. So what I did today is I sanitized my bottles. As you can see, I got them ready. Today's bottling day, by the way. and you should have a priming sugar that comes with your recipe. So what I did, I dissolved it in 2 cups of water, and I'm gonna mix it when I siphon the beer into the bottling bucket. And what it does, it makes the bottles carbonate, and the last stages after we bottle them, we'll let them sit for 2 weeks to carbonate, and after that they're ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour the priming sugar solution into the bottling bucket, and then I'm gonna siphon the beer into that bucket. So here we go. Smells lovely. It's good to have the bottle to siphon it on a high elevation, which makes the siphoning easier. So as you can see, we're in the middle of transferring the beer into the bottling bucket. Just make sure that you don't put the siphon all the way in at the bottom of the fermentation carboy, because you don't want any of the sediments on the bottom to move into your bottling bucket. So just be careful. The last bit of it, just you can leave it there. So it'll take a few minutes to fill up, so I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, so we transfer all the beer to the bottling bucket. I put it up on the chair. I got my bottles ready, and I'm ready to siphon into the bottles. So make sure when you pour the beer into the bottle to leave some space, about 1 inch or so, or 2 inches for the 22-ounce bottles. Alright guys, so we're at the end. We siphoned the beer into the bottles. Now we're capping them. Actually, we're pretty much done. Our bottling bucket. So at this point, once you're done capping your bottles, make sure you need about 2 more weeks for the beer to carbonate, at least. So make sure you put them in somewhere dark, and somewhere relatively warm, between 65 and 72 degrees. At least that's for the lager. The instruction in your recipe may say something different, but usually at a moderate temperature. So that's it. After this, in 2 weeks, they'll be ready to drink. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. And if you like this video, please share it. Thank you.